Our poem for discussion today is Love Song of Alfred J. Prufrock, a modernist text, an autobiographical text, psychological text, and a confessional statement from a person called means prudish, and frock means conscious of style. So he is an archetype of the modern man. The poem is in the form of an interior monologue. He is talking to himself. And I and you in the first line represent this split self, the divided self Mr. Prufrock has. In fact, the poet is giving us a picture of the raw tangles of his thoughts. He is exposing the raw thoughts from his mind. So this poem is an example of a mix of number of images, the jumble of images put together. And the poem is an example of a technique called stream of consciousness technique, a term that comes from psychology. Our mind flows uninterrupted like a stream. So this poem exposes a sick consciousness of the modern man. It's an example of an elusive text because he is borrowing a number of references or illusion. The first borrowing, the first passage that comes from Dante's Inferno is the prime example of a number of texts which have been blundered to make this new poem. The character called Guido in Dante speaks from hell, but Mr. Prufrock speaks from the hell of his own mind. And there is a short note here for the introduction of this poem. The poem introduces a sick and ominous world in which Prufrock lives. The patient evening conceit is appropriate for a number of reasons and several purposes. An unusual image opens this poem. A conceit is there comparing evening to a patient, the world to a hospital, and the whole world is seen to be a table where evening is being given an anesthesia. So the poem combined the lyrical and the medical idiom. And we are going to find out the evening thus assert the poem's violent anti-romantic attitude to life and to the poetic tradition. Evening is generally presented as a twilight time, a period which can be enjoyed by the lover, but Prufrock is a kind of lover who does not appreciate the evening, the twilight zone, because he's got a sickly consciousness a sick psyche which cannot appreciate anything around him. So the evening, neither night nor day, suggests the colorless world of Prufrock. Evening symbolizes the morbid, sickly world. It is not the evening which is diseased, it's mind which suffers from some kind of disease. So, in the day suggests the colorless world of Prufrock which he inhabits or lives in the area of consciousness, aware of itself but unaware of values outside. It's completely cut off from the outside world. So the three basic themes of this poem are loneliness, alienation, and segregation, separation from the larger society, the social circle. And the poem is an example of a show of over scrupulous timidity. He suffers from shyness, timidity, and paralysis of will. He cannot translate his thought into action. This is summed up in a single phrase called paralysis of will. Now, the story, the basic story in the poem is possibly borrowed from Henry James, another writer of his time. There, in the story, is an old man, a middle-aged person who wants to propose a widow, but later drops the idea because he thinks, he meditates, there is a big age gap between the two. And the widow might say no. A similar kind of dilemma Mr. Prufrock is facing. So a woman is there at the backdrop of this story, but this woman is a symbol of the call for life, especially spiritual life. And women is a pervasive image in Yeats' poetry. A mother image is there, a seductress image is there, a violated woman is there. All these images we find in his mini epic of the modern time called The Wasteland, the next poem which he produced in 1922. Now, the conceit brings together two of Baudelaire, who is a French symbolist, and this it was deeply inspired by French symbolism. The two favorite images are the image of fog and cat. That's the statement there. The fog of the unreal city, a symbol of the squalor or dirt, purposelessness and shameful limbo of modern life. The symbolists attack the decadent city culture. And like the symbolists Mallarmé, Lafog and Baudelaire, T.S. Eliot also focuses the poem on a cityscape. He is taking us on a journey through the city, foggy London possibly, but it reminds of all megapolis, all the metropolitan city. This color symbol, the yellow color which dominates, connotes the cowardice and timidity. So the color is also symbolic in the scheme of the poem. The bringing of the fog and the cat together. So the poet had brought together two images, the fog turned cat, which represent the quality of human life in the modern times. A poet's lonely realization of life's anguish and Prufrock's unreality is isolation from those traditional values that alone give time a significance. The poet shows a link between the traditional value and the modern time. So the modern world has lost a link with, a connection with these traditional values which are vital for the survival of, for the upkeep of the modern man. So we continue with this detailed introduction. The love song is more than a retreat from love. There is no love, no song. It's a scathing satire upon modern man. However, it is the portrait of a man in hell. The hell appears to be merely a trivial one of the self-conscious individual. So if you think life is a hell, it becomes a hell. But if you think life is a precious one, it's a God's gift, and we should live life meaningfully, that's called optimism. But this man possibly suffers from pessimistic outlook or pessimistic tendency. So hell is nothing but a state of mind. It's not a place. The social images are highly ironic in this poem. They form a pattern of which the two main components are objective correlative. This is a phrase, a fashionable phrase used by T.S. Eliot in his poetry. His poetry consists of hard, concrete images representing some abstract theme. So he brings together the images with the abstract theme, the concrete images with abstract theme. This is a phenomenon which is called objective correlative. For a self-divided state and a state of paralysis or stagnation, Prufrock is best regarded as the voice of a certain kind of self-consciousness, and his poem as a sequence of images linked not by a narrative chain of cause and effect, but by associative and imaginative logic, and the smog or smoke that dominates the city life is often a symbol of industrialization, waste, corruption. Prufrock is a typical example of the modern man. He is a portrait of the modern man. So he's walking through some rather shady streets of London because he takes us on a mental journey through the streets. These streets lie, they have some sawdust restaurant on way to some place where he is taking us. So his journey is the journey through the city streets, which are half deserted. Possibly people have stopped the communal life. That could be one of the reasons the streets are empty. But his way lies through some cheap hotel, which yesterday was the place of rest and peace. But today, most of the hotels in the modern city have become a place of prostitution and lust. So these are shady city of London, shady places of London, thinking about what awaits him when he reaches his destination. Modern society is a pool of water, and animal-like this man is prowling in the streets. In stagnation of inauthentic lives and living that evokes nothing of our spiritual life or potentialities or even our physical courage. So modern life is a mundane everyday life without a view of spiritual existence or spiritual side of human life, because modern man has developed a secular scientific outlook which believes religion is become ineffective. Religion has become ineffective, sinister. So there is no place for spiritual life in the modern world. The poem is primarily a lengthy meditation of the overwhelming question. This overwhelming question has got two different meanings. One belongs to his proposal to the women, but this also has a spiritual meaning. Overwhelming question is a proposal from Theseus' mother that one should sacrifice one's life for a communal cause, a positive cause. So overwhelming question have got these two meanings, two different connotations of whether he actually dares to take any step to change his situation, in which he finds himself. Prufrock seems to believe that he is characterized as an indecisive, timid person who should not dare take anything for himself. So he lacks courage to take some decisive step which will change his life forever. And that's the next verse paragraph in free verse form. And indeed there will be time. So modern man is conscious of time, and he is borrowing this line from Shakespeare's play called Hamlet. He is busy delaying his visit, Hamlet-like, but there is no comparison between the heroic stature of Hamlet and this superficial character called Prufrock. To wonder, do I dare? He dare not take any decisive action. He goes on muttering and thinking to himself, time to turn back and descend the stairs. Overawed by the situation, he makes a retreat and descends the stair, he is not making any headway in his proposal at the social level or at the spiritual level. They will say how his hair is growing thin. So this man is viscerally conscious of his own inadequacy, his own failing. So he is conscious of the snub and criticism from the women. She might say he is losing his hair, an example of extreme self-consciousness. My morning coat, my collar mounting firmly to the chin. Now he is going to pack up himself. So he is a fashionable dandy who is conscious of his style all the time, and that gives him some kind of a false confidence to interact with the world. And often he lapses into dream and comes back to face the reality. So there are two movements in the poem: in and out of the dream world. So now he is busy dreaming, rich necktie, modest but asserted by a simple pen. Even in dream he is self-conscious of his feeling. So his necktie is asserted with a simple pin which can open any time. Small images become meaningful in the context. Possibly he is scared of death and annihilation. They will say but how his arms and legs are thin, the example of his inadequacy, the consciousness of inadequacy. Do I dare to serve the universe? This phrase comes from a source called, a poem called To His Coy Mistress by Andrew Marvell, a cheeky, bold lover who persuade his shy beloved for love making. But there is no comparison between Mr. Prufrock and the bold lover in Andrew Marvell. For decision and revision, which is a minute will reverse. So the phrase decision is taken from some classical text. But they are played against indecision because he fails to take the bull by the horn. He cannot embrace the opportunity and take a decisive step. The image of the hair and his baldness, the image of aging, inadequacy are introduced here. The bald spot in the middle of hair is a symbol of his aging that offers him frequent reminders of his looming mortality, in turn compounding his spiritual anxiety. The retreat is an important image opposed to communal life. So he is going to retreat from a positive step toward a meaningful existence called communal life. His baldness also bears social significance. Encounters with the women who often snub, censure him, blame him, and baffle him. Prufrock worries about his appearance, expressed in speculative aside in the voices of a woman who will say. So he is always conscious of things going wrong, especially the rejection from the women he is going to propose. He is acutely conscious of his inadequacy. He has a deep and abiding sense of his own unworthiness. He knows He is not fit for any positive action, any decisive step. So we continue, certainly trivialities abound. There are a number of mundane trivialities. The poem is full of them. For example, the proper necktie, artistic small talk, and the rest. The women are having a chit chat about Michelangelo, the example of small talk. That is the kind of society in which Prufrock moved. So this is a society, London society, genteel, cultured society of the fashionable people. Because culture has become a point of gossip for the fashionable people. And obviously there is boredom in the empty fullness of life. Moreover, it suits its purpose to set the scene superficially on this level. The primary focus is the development and the revelation of the speaker's character. The aim of the poet is to reveal the main character, who is the symbol of modern man. It is a love song as only speaker could create. So this song is neurotic, awkward, and filled with uncertainty. It modernizes the dramatic form by removing the implied lister and focuses upon Prufrock's interiority and isolation. The poem has been converted into interior monologue for a specific purpose. Acute self-consciousness is the purpose. Furthermore, through his division of self, he represents paralysis of the will and the power to act. So because he is a divine self, a split self, he is incapable of taking any positive action, any decisive action. Prufrock speaks at a moment of decision. Let us go. So this is the repetition of the phrase, let us go. And the whole poem is full of repetition of such phrases. And make our visit, he says, and the Browning immediacy of time and place we are reminded of, given a new dimension by the foreshadowing of the image of sky. Like a patient etherized upon a table, which leads to the central question, shall he or dare he propose a woman? The answer being no, the title is ironic. He will never sing his love song, nor will he listen to the mermaid. So even mermaid, which are nothing but the girls bathing in the sea, and he believes they are the fairy creatures, they will not also sing to him, ever sing to him, because his thoughts are morbid and sickly and utterly pessimistic, so he cannot entertain any positive image of life. Prufrock, unsupported by a vision or a guide, never finds the spiritual objective. Freed from history, wholly subjective time, time becomes the medium of a poet without a mission. Three things exist in the poem: alienation, loneliness, doubt, and ambiguity means a statement having more than one meaning. So this poem is full of images representing isolation, loneliness, and ambiguity. We are going to read now the next passage, and indeed there will be time. So he is purposely delaying. This is called procrastination. To postpone everything for some favorable time. This is his technique, this is his style of life. For the yellow smoke that slides along the streets, yellow is the color, the symbol of morbidness, sickness. His eyes are jaundiced, so he is watching yellow everywhere. His perception is disease. There will be time to prepare a face to meet the faces that you make. So there is a repetition of time, image and face. So we are abnormally conscious of transient time, short-living time of human existence, because we are conscious of mortality. And second dominant image is the image of face, which brings out the hypocrisy of the modern society. We prepare our faces. We don't meet the friends in the society with a genuine smile. We always have a plastic smile to flash. That's how we prepare, and we hide our true face. Face is the index of human personality. But modern man does not reveal the true face in the society. That lifts the drop a question on your plate. So his life has become a question mark in such a society, a puzzle, a conundrum, which he cannot interact. Time for you and time for me. So he is believing, he is imagining there will be some favorable time for you and me again, and for 100 vision and a vision before the taking of the toast and tea. Taking of toast and tea is a ritual, a social ritual, a religious convention. So he is imitating religious idiom for the purpose. The poem offers us a direct insight into his confused, questioning, wandering mind. He appears trapped in his own thoughts, thinking of the value of some bygone era, some other time, when toast and tea were a ceremony. In his smoke symbol, Prufrock sees his own sensibility like a cat, a cowardly animal lingering in the streets. The cat has some desire to get indoors. It rubs its back and muzzle upon the window pane. This reveals animal behavior. When an animal is driven by lust, it starts rubbing its back and muzzle on the window pane. In order to get indoors, Prufrock's longing runs throughout the poem but is neatly concealed. His despair projected in the whole poem and elsewhere. So this was the third verse paragraph of the poem. Now we'll sum up the significance of this paragraph. T.S. Eliot brought an intense visual imagination to bear in his poetry. So his use of symbol and motive is worth careful consideration. Tracking of symbol across the poem will deepen our sense of poem structure and meaning. We can appreciate this poem if we appreciate the symbol and images and leitmotif, means recurring images in the text or in the poem. A mock preacher celebrates Eucharist of toast and tea. Prufrock lampoons the biblical idiom but empty phrases of murder and creation have been borrowed from Shakespeare possibly. Eliot is suggesting that the legacy of critical preacher of surrender for an ideal cause has failed to find present-day continuator. All the works drop a question on your plate, so his life has become a question mark because he has lost faith in that superpower beyond human reach. Implies a moment inheritance of other time and labor that in the trivial setting of genteel modern society can no longer inspire a spirit of self-sacrifice. This is the deeper layer of meaning of this poem. This modern world has bogged people down in the everyday concerns of life. Believes Joseph Campbell, a scholar of myth. So man is so bogged down, so involved in everyday activity, he doesn't find a time to meditate upon some other purpose in his life, some spiritual mission in his life. So we read now the next stanza, the next verse paragraph. For the vehicle of his wordplay and imagery or images is to admit the loss of a redemptive history that is his duty to realize. He cannot find any spark of life. For I have known them all, already known them all, have known the evening, morning, afternoon. This is the fraction of the day. The man is busy in the routine, everyday life, a mundane life. I have measured out my life with a coffee spoon. It simply means here I have wasted my life sipping a cup of coffee. Measured out my life with coffee spoon is a very favorite phrase of T.S. Eliot. So he is conscious of the futility and the waste of his life. Beneath the music from a father room, so how should I presume? He is now drawn to some music coming from a distant room, and he thinks, how can he presume and propose? How can he presume the woman loves him and can propose her? Another phrase borrowed is a dying fall. It's an allusion to Shakespeare's Twelfth Night. The poem represents T.S. rejection against a familiar legacy, at once too demanding and too futile to be renewed. Prufrock, fretful, futile, is aware of the meaninglessness of his world, the world in which he measures out his life with coffee spoon. So he knows he has wasted his life without any significant purpose or direction or meaning. So the narrative structure of the poem may be described as failing or falling into four distinct sections. This first section is a complete movement from the street at the evening through the fog to the entrance up the stair to the moment. So he has brought us to a room full of women, but who he loved, he fails to point out, he failed to give a clue to it. When Prufrock hovers on the edge of the overwhelming question, and should I then presume, and how should I presume? He plays upon the world and wastes the time. The phrase overwhelming question is an allusion to James Cooper, the pioneer. The overwhelming question that is not asked is nothing more or less than a proposal of marriage. Or at another level, an acceptance of the call for self-sacrifice in life. By means of direct reference and illusion, T.S. Eliot establishes a firm concept of cultural excellence, a critique of value by which our world is judged and found wanting. So judge in terms of the value of the bygone era or the past, our world is empty, is morbid and sickly.